Coming up on NPT Reports, Aging Matters, Opioids and Addiction.
You don't think about a grandmother as a potential person to have a substance use disorder.
Here I was, 60 years old. I wasn't one of those people, and I felt very ashamed and embarrassed to have to be there and say I'm an alcoholic.
I'm thinking I can handle this with after one use, one smoke, one puff, one drink, one snort, and I would be okay.
Substance abuse among adults 60 and older is one of the fastest growing health problems in the U.S., and it takes a greater toll on older adults than on the young.
Higher risk for heart attack, seizures, strokes, depression, and that's really the short list.
I can remember asking her, "Mom, are you taking your medication right?" "Oh yeah, I'm doing fine," and believing it.
Among adults age 65 and older, more than half take at least 5 prescription drugs, and 1 in 3 take prescription opioids for pain. That's a red flag for drug interactions, misuse, and abuse.
I started getting worried because I was no longer taking it to stop pain. I was taking it so I wouldn't be sick.
Even when older adults are not in addiction themselves, many cannot escape its impact.
The primary reason why children are placed with relative caregivers and out of the custody of their parents is because substance abuse, incarceration, and parental homelessness.
My son was on drugs. Everything I had, he would steal it.
The challenges of substance misuse are complex, and aging baby boomers will likely feel the effects, whether directly or indirectly.
I feel very sad about the condition of our country at this point. We're really having to take a big step in a different direction, and it's leaving a lot of people suffering.
Major funding for NPT Reports, Aging Matters is provided by the West End Home Foundation, enriching the lives of older adults through grant-making, advocacy, and community collaboration. The HCA Foundation, on behalf of TriStar Health. The JEANETTE Travis Foundation, dedicated to improving the health and well-being of the Middle Tennessee community. Cigna Health Spring. Additional funding provided by Jackson National Life Insurance Company, the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, and by members of NPT. Thank you.
This edition of Aging Matters is a story of pain. How the effort to treat a common aspect of growing older, chronic pain, is linked to the opioid crisis, and how older adults carry the burdens from substance abuse among younger family members. You might think opioid misuse is a problem of youth. But adults ages 55 to 64 have the highest death rate from opioids, according to the Centers for Disease Control. That age group is also seeing a spike in other kinds of substance abuse, including alcohol. I'm Kathy Mattea. As our country grapples with this public health crisis, we are forced to confront the disease of addiction for all age groups. Are we more vulnerable to substance abuse as we grow older? And what about the collateral impact of drug abuse on the healthcare, lifestyle, and economics of older adults? Join me as we explore aging and addiction in the era of opioids.
My addiction started many years ago with alcoholism, and then I have progressed through the years into an opioid addiction.
I was a weekend warrior. During the course of the week, I would work, I would take care of my business. The weekend is usually when I went on binges.
After I retired, I often would get up and have mimosas or Bloody Mary. And again, once the morning drinking started, it just snowballed for the rest of the day.
I was taking 3 40-milligram Oxycontins per day, plus 3 10-milligram Percocets per day. That's what I was prescribed. It consumes you mentally and physically when you know you don't have any more.
Until the opioid crisis, addiction in older adults was often overlooked, as though after age 50 or 60 we become immune to the disease of substance abuse. But addiction ages well.
I've been told that many times, as nobody would have ever guessed that I was an opiate addict.
My idea of an alcoholic was the people you see out here on the streets, you know, walking around with a bag in their hand with a bottle in the bag. That wasn't me, you know? That was not me at all.
An addict can look like me, smell like me, talk like me, and still be in their addiction.
Overall, we're seeing higher rates of substance misuse and addiction among the senior population, particularly in the younger old, the baby boomers, those in their late 50s, 60s, and some into their 70s. You know, they grew up during the 60s and used many different substances during that period of time.
The other is people who start later in life. And there's a number of things that happen in the lifespan that are difficult for people to manage that oftentimes leads to substance use. Like there's a lot of loss of people that you cared about, and so grief is a big part of that. There's isolation as you get older, as you lose your friends and people are not coming around as frequently. There's also chronic pain that comes along with getting older and just having more conditions.
Dr. Lyle Cooper is a researcher and assistant professor at Meharry Medical College. He has studied substance use disorder in adults 50 and older.
What maybe at one point wouldn't have been considered a use disorder or even risky use, for a person who's 50 or older, it becomes more risky.
Changes in bodily functions as we age can make a big difference in the effects of drugs and alcohol. Body water decreases, and it's harder to flush out substances. Sensitivity increases, and tolerance decreases, so intoxication or poisoning happens at lower amounts of drugs and drinks. Gastrointestinal metabolism decreases, so substances don't break down well and can build up in the body.
People become intoxicated faster. They're also older. They're more prone to falls. They may be on other medications that interact with alcohol that they weren't on earlier in their life because of changes that happen as they move through the lifespan. And so it really becomes much more of a problem at a lower level.
For older adults, substance abuse disorder can result in a higher risk for heart attacks, seizures, strokes, and depression. They are also more likely to have an adverse reaction to medications.
Physicians often undiagnose or misdiagnose the problem because sometimes the symptoms look like other things, things like confusion, depression, and they don't identify kind of the root cause of the problem that's happening. Older adults feel they may be stigmatized. There's a big stigma associated with addiction, particularly those in their 70s and 80s, and they don't want to talk about it. So they don't tell their family members, they don't tell friends that they are taking these medications, and don't bring it up when they talk to their doctors.
Substance abuse and misuse is not intentional for many older adults. It often begins with a legally prescribed medication that progresses to abuse if used the wrong way.
My name is Jim Owenby. I'm from East Tennessee, and I believe my mother was overprescribed opiates that caused her death. My mother was 64 years old when she passed, and she had developed breast cancer and had her left breast removed. She was in pain.
Jim Owenby's mother, Laura Strange, was taking prescription opiates and other medications for blood pressure and depression when her memory and behavior began to change.
And she had come in one morning and got coffee, and she was sitting in the chair, and we were just chatting back and forth. And then all of a sudden she just stopped talking, and then when I looked over, I just realized she had spilled coffee all down the front of her. And it was, hot, and there was no reaction. She didn't even wake up. And I said, "Mom, your medication's off." I said, "There's something not right here." And she's like, No, I'm fine.
On March 6, 2014, Strange was found dead on her bedroom floor, the house and furniture in disarray. An autopsy report said she died of a stroke, and Owenby believes opiates were a factor.
I just think that she overdosed and she just over-medicated and was falling and trying to get her wits about her, so to speak.
At the time of her death, pharmacy records show Strange was getting 180 oxycodone tablets about every 30 days. Her prescribed dosage was one 30-milligram tablet every 4 hours as needed.
This was the purse that we found in the living room. It had prescription medicines in it. When you realize there's an issue, the first signs of it, then you definitely need to go into private detective mode, or just say, I want to see your purse. Just kind of like with your kids, Well, it's the same with your elderly parents as far as with medications.
We don't want to turn off an older adult in bringing up this topic, because they may think, well, what's the next step? Is my caregiver going to say, let's, maybe assisted living or a nursing home might be more appropriate. So when caregivers bring up this topic, it's really in the context of wellness and health and independence, because older adults are at high risk for misuse and addiction as they age due to sensitivities that they have with pharmaceuticals.
The number of opioid-related overdose deaths in Tennessee has increased tenfold since 1999, according to the Centers for Disease Control. The state is in the top 15 for drug overdose deaths, and the biggest percentage increase is among adults age 55 to 64.
And I guess what bothers me, we didn't know as much 5 years ago as we do now. Well, that information was there 5 years ago, but it just wasn't put out there. And so my question is, why?
Thousands of people dying.
The overdoses of the synthetic opioid fentanyl have increased exponentially.
A trial date is approaching for makers of opioids.
The most comprehensive lawsuit yet against opioid manufacturers.
It's everywhere. Almost any American will know
One of the biggest health threats we are facing today is the opioid crisis.
A perfect storm of science, suffering, and sales strategy over 2 decades is what we now call the opioid epidemic. Science in a drug touted as a non-addictive narcotic pain reliever. Suffering from physical pain that medicine said we can eradicate and manage. Sales strategy so aggressive and deceptive that opioids became the most prescribed narcotic pain reliever in history. Tennessee now has the second highest rate of opioid prescriptions in the country, more than 1 prescription for every man, woman, and child.
I love this quote by Franz Kafka from 1919. It's 100 years old, but it's perfect. He said, to write a prescription is easy. To come to an understanding with patients is hard, it's difficult. That takes time. And I'm telling you that the pharmaceutical industry has capitalized on that. People didn't look at where the messaging was coming from, and they didn't look at the money behind the studies that were laying this out here as a problem.
Dr. Stephen Lloyd is former Assistant Commissioner for Substance Abuse in Tennessee and a specialist in addiction medicine, a career sparked by his own struggle with opioid abuse years ago, at the height of the marketing and misinformation about opioid painkillers.
It's safe. It's coming from a doctor's office. It's in a pill bottle. I got it at my pharmacy. And I'm telling you, it's the same thing that the heroin dealer is selling on the street corner. Same stuff. Somebody who's addicted to opioids, be it pain medication or heroin, their cravings for their drug are tenfold stronger than your cravings are for food when you're hungry and water when you're thirsty. When I learned that, I got it. I get it. Because I know what I would do to eat. And the truth is, I know what I would do to get my drug in the past.
Lloyd is driven to help people understand how addiction rewires brain functions that control judgment, pleasure, and the body's natural hormone for blocking pain, endorphins.
What happens whenever we take things like opioid pain medication, it gets rid of the need for that. It occupies those opioid receptors without us making it on our own. So what are some things that cause those endorphins to be released? Food. Right, so we look down, it's 11:30, that's a cue, we start smelling food, we haven't eaten, we know, right? We're animals, we know. And that's really the feeling that people with addiction have. So when you become addicted, it's about the pain pill, it's about the pleasure. You lose insight and judgment, you don't have access to it. If people don't take away anything else from our time together, please take that away. Because the person who is actively addicted doesn't have insight and judgment, and worse yet, they don't know it.
Addiction takes over everything. Takes over your body, takes over your mind, takes over your relationships.
And I would write my own prescriptions, and was caught and convicted of 11 forgery felonies.
I started to sell things, I started to lie, I started to borrow money, just whatever I could do to get money to get the drug of my choice at the time.
Am I a danger to, have I been a danger to other people? Absolutely, because I could have killed myself and I definitely could have killed somebody else. Surprisingly, I've never gotten a DUI. I should have gotten a lot of DUIs over my lifetime.
Alcohol is the most abused substance in the United States, particularly in older adults. In his study of older adults in Nashville, Dr. Cooper found that about 30% of the older residents reported substance misuse problems, both alcohol and drugs, a much higher percentage than previous studies of older adults.
There was a strong relationship between having a depressive disorder, an anxiety disorder, and having an alcohol use disorder. There was a strong relationship between having an alcohol use disorder and other substance use disorders. There was a higher rate among men. There is a lot of early death among substance users. Oftentimes they experience things that typically only happen to people that are older. So the picture of the patient is that they do seem more like an older adult because of some of the life factors that went into using substances over a long period.
No matter what substance is being used, substance abuse often starts in pain. Emotional pain from relationships or circumstances, physical pain from injury or illness.
After certain events happened in my life, it got to where it just kind of became a Band-Aid for all my emotions. I thought it made them go away. It at least hid them for a while.
And the pain start to relate to the ones that you love, the ones that's closest to you. We hurt the people and we cause pain for the people that are closest to us, the ones that want to help us the most.
The doctors that prescribed this medication to me, they were trying to help me manage a serious pain problem I had at the time. Problem is the medication and the tools they had to work with when the pain finally did subside years later. The need for the opiate medications was no less than it was when I was in serious pain.
There was a time where pain was just sort of disregarded by physicians. It wasn't something that they considered that was a normal part of life. And when people really started to see some of the detrimental effects of that, the pendulum just swung too far.
By 1990, pain was being assessed in a way that shifted medical culture.
It was added as a vital sign.
Pain as a fifth vital sign.
The idea of the fifth vital sign changed the way that physicians really worked with patients, so that pain then became one of their focuses of treatment. And then secondly, doctors started to be judged on their ability to manage pain, which put pressure on physicians to prescribe those medications that could then relieve pain.
I would say that there was always a rumbling of question underneath that, but no one wanted to be the one to say, wait a second, this doesn't make sense, because as physicians, we want to help people.
Dr. Allison Bollinger is Chief of Emergency Medicine at St. Thomas Midtown Hospital in Nashville.
Any ER physician would tell you that they have a handful of patients they know by first name. And that's the sad truth, is that there are people who come to our ERs regularly over and over again who are looking for pain medication. And they may go to one hospital and then the next hospital and another hospital all within the same day. We said we need to create a protocol in our emergency departments for how we will prescribe opiates and what we will not prescribe opiates for. We've decreased that by 60% just from what we've done in the past year. So that's 60% less opioids on the street for people to abuse, for them to divert, for them to overdose on, to get addicted to. So we consider that a huge win.
At one point, I had 5 different prescriptions. I know a whole lot of people would go to these pain clinics and they didn't even take the medication, they sold it. You know, and people could make $4,000 and $5,000 a month just on their prescriptions.
I use the term swapping baseball cards. You know, can I borrow 6 or 8 and I'll give those back to you when I get mine? But what happens is you do that, and then you start out the next month already 6 behind. And you don't not pay that person back. They can get very unpleasant.
Pill swapping and shopping is common with addiction, and some of the main suppliers are under the guise of pharmacies and pain clinics, so-called pill mills that sell opioids in violation of licensing, prescribing, and substance control regulations. A recent federal crackdown led to indictments of 60 medical professionals in 6 states. More than half were in Tennessee.
These are not doctors that don't understand. These are not doctors that are doing it and don't realize the damage. These are people who are profiting from it, right? These are criminals. They need to go to jail. So we have actively prosecuted those. We have decreased the number of pill mills or pain clinics. I don't want to use those terms interchangeably because there are pain clinics in our state that do a great job, that service people and allow them to go about their lives, and those are quality places. We want all of them we can get.
Again, I sent home an XLAP at 2.5 days because we just didn't need it.
Clinics and doctors that specialize in pain treatment now face stricter regulations and prescribing laws. That has created challenges for some patients.
It's just difficult when you hurt so bad and you don't sleep. When the law first changed, I was not happy about it because my concern was, I know how bad I'm hurting with them. What if I don't have them? How bad will I hurt?
Danny Knight is not addicted to pain pills, but he has relied on them for years to help manage his pain from a bone disease.
My primary care physician decided that he didn't want to deal with all the new requirements, so he referred me here to the Vanderbilt Pain Clinic.
Vanderbilt Pain Clinic is part of a growing movement to treat pain holistically, using a variety of non-narcotic therapies.
I like to include medications last for a reason. To regain the function, to get yourself out of a hole, has a maintenance in the background so you can plant your garden in the spring. That is a successful use of a medicine. Hey, Danny.
Hey.
Dr. David Edwards, the clinic director, says his profession must not only treat pain, but also restore trust due to the collateral damage from opioid misuse.
The spotlight is on now. I'm dealing against the stigma of pain providers and pain practices, but it's an opportunity to bring holistic approaches and to teach others and what they are.
Admitting I needed to do something different.
Everyone kind of needs to relearn a little bit of what the latest is on pain treatment and not go back to the old tools that were used that had consequences.
Substance use disorder was treated more like a moral failing for a long, long time, and it even filtered into the treatment systems. 1 in 3 people in the state have been affected by this in some way. So as I look forward, I think the stigma could definitely be reduced because everyone will have the experience, whether it's direct or indirect.
I never thought that I would be caring for grandchildren. I just assumed that I would just get to spoil them and send them home.
I mean, I try so hard. And to hear her say, I want my mama. I mean, can't you see I'm trying to be your mother?
The people in this support group are raising the children of relatives, and their number is increasing in Tennessee, now estimated to be around 100,000.
The primary reason why children are placed with relative caregivers and out of the custody of their parents is because substance abuse, incarceration, and parental homelessness. And currently we're seeing an influx, and we have been seeing an influx for about the last 10 years.
He was 4 weeks old. His father was already incarcerated. His mother was going to be, and she had taken him downtown to the state building to give him up.
These individuals have already raised families, they've already put kids through school, they've planned on maybe retiring, downsizing their house, and all of those things change dramatically.
This right here.
No, Mom, no.
At 64, Linda Whitaker is single-handedly raising her 13-year-old cousin, Tayshawn.
I have been retired for 13 years now. Because I got Tayshawn, and I wanted to devote most of my life to him.
She'll ask me if, do I want anything, and I'll say no.
But then she'll just keep asking me. I'm like, I already said no, please just stop. I love her as a person. And she's like somewhat related to me, so. My original mom couldn't really take care of me at the time because of what position she was in.
Whitaker is determined to fill the void left in Tayshawn's life. But while many relative caregivers are prepared to love a child whose parent lost custody, they struggle with legal, financial, and social services that are made available to children in state custody.
Where do we get help? I didn't know there was many more of me out there, but where do I go to say, I'm a homeowner and I was paying mortgage and house, car note and all of this, and here I have a mouth to feed off of $1,400 a month. How can I do it? How am I going to do it? And why is the system not helping us?
The epidemic of addiction afflicts so many unintended targets with no preference for age, race, gender, or socioeconomic status. To eradicate or even control this disease requires changing attitudes about addiction and how to treat it.
Really looking at the whole treatment landscape and saying, how do we move this person one notch closer to health? Would we like to see everybody stop using drugs? Absolutely. Is that going to happen? Probably not. And so I think we need to use all the tools at our disposal.
The biggest obstacle we face is stigma. It's not lack of funding, although we need more, and it's not policy, although we need better. And so I think that's part of it, is understanding that this is not a moral failure, that this is actually a brain disorder. And the other part of that is that it's treatable.
Addiction is a disease that can strike anyone at any age. The challenge for older adults, their medical providers, and families is to recognize when drug use has veered into misuse or even abuse, and how to meet the unique needs of treating it in older people. We also need methods to treat pain that don't cause greater suffering as a consequence. To learn more and to see all of Nashville Public Television's Aging Matters series, visit our website, wnpt.org/agingmatters. Thanks for watching.
Major funding for NPT Reports Aging Matters is provided by the West End Home Foundation, enriching the lives of older adults through grant-making, advocacy, and community collaboration. The HCA Foundation, on behalf of TriStar Health. The Jeanette Travis Foundation, dedicated to improving the health and well-being of the Middle Tennessee community. Cigna Health Spring. Additional funding provided by Jackson National Life Insurance Company, the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, and by members of NPT. Thank you.